James Wallace, a seasoned war photographer with a reputation for capturing the raw, unfiltered reality of conflict, found himself drawn to a new assignment that promised a different kind of challenge. His latest project took him to the American South, to a remote and largely forgotten site known as Whispering Woods. This place was the setting of a brutal and overlooked skirmish from the Civil War, one that had been swallowed by time and nature. The journey to Whispering Woods was arduous. James drove for hours on winding, deteriorating roads that seemed to lead deeper into isolation. The nearest town was a ghost of its former self, with only a few buildings still standing and even fewer people around. James checked into the only motel, a dilapidated structure that had seen better days. The elderly owner, Mrs. Callahan, gave him a room key and a look of silent concern when he mentioned his destination. "Not many go to Whispering Woods," she said, her voice a raspy whisper. "Some say the place is cursed. Be careful out there." James, though intrigued by her warning, shrugged it off as local superstition. He was here to capture history, not ghost stories. Early the next morning, he loaded his gear into his car and set off for the woods. The forest loomed ahead, dark and dense, as if it were guarding the secrets of its past. Upon arrival, James parked at the edge of the woods and began his trek on foot. The forest was eerily silent, the kind of quiet that pressed against your ears and made you hyper-aware of every sound. The path he followed was overgrown, barely a trace of the once-trodden route taken by soldiers over a century ago. As he moved deeper into the forest, the canopy thickened, casting long shadows and filtering the sunlight into dim patches. The air felt heavy with history, each step seeming to echo with the footsteps of those who had marched before. James paused frequently, taking photographs of the landscape, the twisted ancient trees, the moss-covered stones, the remnants of trenches now barely discernible under the undergrowth. Each click of his camera seemed to reverberate through the forest, a stark contrast to the oppressive silence. After hours of exploring, James stumbled upon a small clearing. It was an unassuming patch of grass and wildflowers, but it had a peculiar quality that set it apart. The air here was different, thicker, and there was a palpable sense of presence, as if the clearing was alive with the memories of those who had fallen here. James felt a chill despite the warm afternoon sun. Setting up his tripod and adjusting his camera, James began to capture the scene. He took wide shots of the clearing, close-ups of the wildflowers, and angled photos that showcased the contrast between the serene present and the violent past. As he worked, he couldn't shake the feeling that he was being watched. He glanced over his shoulder more than once, half expecting to see someone standing at the edge of the clearing. Satisfied with his shots, James packed up his equipment and made his way back to the motel, the eerie atmosphere of the forest lingering in his mind. That evening, in the dim light of his motel room, he eagerly reviewed the day's photographs on his laptop. As he scrolled through the images, his excitement turned to confusion, and then to unease. In several photos of the clearing, faint shapes began to emerge. At first they were barely noticeable, just subtle distortions in the light and shadows. But as James enhanced the images, the shapes became more distinct. They were human figures, spectral and ghostly, appearing to stand among the trees and wildflowers. The figures seemed to be soldiers, their uniforms tattered and worn, their faces obscured, but their postures unmistakably weary and watchful. James's heart raced as he stared at the images. He knew his camera and his skills well. These were not tricks of the light or photographic errors. These were spirits, caught in a moment of timelessness, reaching out from the past. Intrigued and unnerved, James knew he had to return to Whispering Woods. There was a story here that needed to be uncovered, a story that the spirits seemed desperate to tell. That night, James lay awake in his creaky motel bed, the images of the spectral soldiers haunting his thoughts. He felt a mix of fear and determination. He had always believed that photography could capture more than just a moment in time. It could capture the essence of a place, the emotions of an event. Now, it seemed, his camera had captured the echoes of a forgotten war, and he was compelled to listen. The morning air was crisp and cool as James Wallace prepared for his second journey into Whispering Woods. The previous night's revelations had left him restless, his mind racing with possibilities. He packed his camera gear with meticulous care, adding a digital recorder and a sturdy notebook to his bag. He knew he needed to document every detail of what he might encounter. The spectral figures in his photographs were more than just anomalies. They were the key to a story buried for over a century. James arrived at the edge of the forest as the sun began to climb, casting long shadows that danced among the trees. The path seemed even more overgrown than before, the forest itself appearing almost alive, as if it were aware of his presence. Each step he took felt like an intrusion into a world that had remained undisturbed for years. As he approached the clearing, the sense of anticipation grew. The air felt denser, and the whispers of the leaves seemed to guide him forward. James set up his equipment in the center of the clearing, his camera on its tripod, and the digital recorder placed nearby. He took a deep breath and began to speak aloud, his voice steady despite the eerie atmosphere. "I know you're here," he said, feeling somewhat foolish but determined. "I can see you in my photographs. I want to tell your story. Please show me what happened here." He began taking photographs methodically, ensuring he covered every angle of the clearing. The silence was profound, broken only by the occasional rustle of leaves and the distant call of a bird. As he worked, James felt the weight of unseen eyes upon him, an almost tangible presence that made the hair on the back of his neck stand on end. After several hours, James decided to take a break. He sat on a fallen log, reviewing the images on his camera's display. The spectral figures were there again, even more distinct than before. Some appeared to be in mid-action, as if frozen in time, soldiers aiming rifles, others tending to wounded comrades, their expressions of fear, pain, and determination etched in ghostly detail. James's hands trembled slightly as he switched to his digital recorder. He played back the audio, hoping to capture any sounds that might have escaped his notice. At first, all he heard was the ambient noise of the forest. But then, faintly, he picked up voices, whispers, indistinct but undeniably human. Straining to listen, he could make out snippets of conversation, fragmented words that seemed to carry immense weight. "Help us. Betrayed. Justice." The voices sent chills down James's spine. These were the voices of the fallen, the spirits trapped in the clearing, seeking resolution for the injustices they had suffered. James knew he needed more context, more information to piece together their story. He decided to delve deeper into the historical records available in the nearby town. Returning to the local library, James immersed himself in the archives. He pored over old newspapers, diaries, and letters, piecing together the events that had led to the battle at Whispering Woods. The skirmish had been brutal, with heavy casualties on both sides. But what struck James was the lack of detail about the aftermath. There were no mentions of burials or memorials, no records of the soldiers who had died there. It was as if the battle had been deliberately erased from history. His research led him to a small, handwritten account by a soldier named Thomas Everett. Everett's diary described the chaos of the battle, the desperation of the soldiers, and a chilling revelation. After the fighting had ceased, a group of wounded soldiers had sought refuge in the clearing, only to be ambushed by a rogue band of mercenaries. These mercenaries, driven by greed and bloodlust, had slaughtered the defenseless men, leaving their bodies to rot in the forest. James felt a surge of anger and sorrow. The soldiers' spirits were restless, trapped by the brutality of their untimely deaths and the injustice of being forgotten. He realized that their presence in his photographs and their voices on the recorder were cries for acknowledgement and closure. Equipped with this newfound understanding, James returned to Whispering Woods. This time, he felt a deeper connection to the place, a sense of purpose that went beyond capturing images. He stood in the clearing, the journal of Thomas Everett in hand, and spoke aloud once more. "I know what happened to you. I know the truth. Your story will not be forgotten." As he spoke, the forest seemed to respond. The air grew colder, and the whispers intensified. James began taking photographs again, hoping to capture any reaction from the spirits. The spectral figures appeared once more, but now they seemed less agitated, their forms clearer and more at peace. They were listening. James felt a profound sense of responsibility. He knew he had to share this story with the world, to bring justice to the fallen soldiers whose voices had been silenced for too long. He spent the rest of the day in the clearing, documenting every detail, every whisper, determined to ensure that the truth of Whispering Woods would finally be known. The following day, James Wallace woke with a renewed sense of purpose and urgency. He had a mission now, a responsibility to the spirits of Whispering Woods to uncover and share the truth of their tragic fate. Equipped with his camera, recorder, and the notebook containing Thomas Everett's harrowing account, he returned to the forest. The weather had taken a turn. Dark clouds loomed overhead, casting the woods in an ominous shadow. The atmosphere felt even more charged with tension than before. As James trekked deeper into the forest, the whispers seemed louder, more insistent, as if urging him forward. He reached the familiar clearing and set up his equipment with practiced efficiency. The weight of the journal in his bag reminded him of the dark secret he had uncovered, a secret that demanded to be brought to light. James started by calling out to the spirits again, this time with a sense of urgency. "I know what happened here. You were betrayed, slaughtered by mercenaries. I'm here to tell your story, to make sure the world knows the truth. Show me what I need to see." He began photographing the clearing, moving methodically around the area. As he did, he noticed the spectral figures reappearing, clearer and more distinct than ever before. They seemed to be guiding him, their ghostly forms pointing toward the center of the clearing. James followed their silent directions, feeling the ground beneath his feet shift slightly, as if something was buried just below the surface. With a sense of trepidation, James started to dig. The soil was loose and gave way easily, revealing an old, rusted tin box. He carefully pried it open, revealing a collection of letters and documents stained with age and blood. His heart raced as he realized the significance of what he had found. These were the final testimonies of the soldiers who had perished in the massacre. James sat down on a nearby log and began to read the letters. They were heart-wrenching accounts of the soldiers' last moments, written in hurried, desperate script. The letters detailed the horror of the ambush, the merciless slaughter by the mercenaries, and the helplessness of the wounded men. One letter in particular stood out. It was from Thomas Everett, addressed to his wife. "Dearest Margaret, if you are reading this, it means I have fallen. Know that I died not in battle but betrayed by those who sought to profit from our suffering. We were ambushed, slaughtered like animals, and left to rot in this cursed place. Please do not let our deaths be in vain. Tell the world what happened here. We deserve to be remembered. Yours forever, Thomas." Tears welled up in James's eyes as he read the final words of a man who had died in such a cruel and senseless manner. He felt the weight of their stories pressing down on him, the desperate need for justice and recognition. He knew he had to act quickly. The world needed to know the truth. James spent the next few hours meticulously documenting the letters and photographing the contents of the tin box. He was so engrossed in his work that he almost didn't notice the spectral figures gathering around him. When he finally looked up, he saw the spirits of the soldiers standing in a solemn circle, their faces no longer twisted in anguish, but bearing an expression of hope. The air grew colder, and James felt a strange energy coursing through the clearing. The digital recorder on the ground began to pick up clearer, more coherent voices. He strained to listen, and the words sent chills down his spine. "Thank you. Tell our story. Justice." The spirits were communicating directly with him, their gratitude palpable. James felt a profound sense of connection to these lost souls, a bond forged through their shared mission to uncover the truth. He knew he had to take the next step, to bring this story to the public eye. Returning to his lodgings that evening, James compiled all the evidence he had gathered. The photographs, the recordings, the letters. All of it formed a compelling narrative of betrayal and injustice. He contacted local historians, journalists, and anyone who would listen, sharing the story of Whispering Woods and the terrible secret it had harbored for so long. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Historians were intrigued by the discovery, journalists were captivated by the haunting photographs, and the public was moved by the poignant letters from the fallen soldiers. A team of archaeologists and forensic experts was quickly assembled to investigate the site, hoping to uncover more evidence and give the fallen soldiers the recognition they deserved. James returned to Whispering Woods with the team, guiding them to the clearing and showing them the tin box and its contents. As they began their work, the atmosphere in the forest seemed to shift. The oppressive heaviness lifted, replaced by a sense of solemn purpose. The spirits of the soldiers watched silently, their presence a constant reminder of the importance of this mission. As the archaeologists unearthed more artifacts and remains, the full extent of the massacre became clear. The evidence corroborated Thomas Everett's account, confirming that the soldiers had been ambushed and killed by mercenaries. The story spread quickly, making headlines and sparking widespread interest in this forgotten chapter of history. A memorial was planned to honor the fallen soldiers, ensuring that their sacrifices would never be forgotten again. James felt a deep sense of fulfillment, knowing that he had played a crucial role in bringing their story to light. The spirits had trusted him to tell their tale, and he had done so with all the integrity and compassion he could muster. As the investigation continued, James found himself reflecting on the power of photography to capture not just images, but the essence of a moment. He had always believed in the ability of his work to tell stories, but this experience had taken that belief to a whole new level. The echoes of Whispering Woods had resonated through his lens, revealing a truth that had been hidden for too long. With the memorial plans underway and the story of the Whispering Woods massacre making its way into history books, James felt a sense of closure. The spirits of the soldiers had found their voice through his photographs and their final letters, and justice was finally being served. The terrible secret of Whispering Woods had been unveiled, and the fallen could now rest in peace, their story forever etched in the annals of history. The memorial for the fallen soldiers of Whispering Woods was set to be dedicated on a sunny autumn day. James Wallace arrived early, accompanied by a growing crowd of historians, archaeologists, descendants of the soldiers, and locals who had been touched by the story. The atmosphere was somber yet hopeful, a palpable sense of closure in the air. The memorial stood in the very clearing where James had first encountered the spirits, a simple but poignant monument bearing the names of the fallen and a plaque recounting their story. As the ceremony began, James felt a mixture of pride and solemnity. He had spent months immersed in this project, driven by the need to give the soldiers the recognition they deserved. The memorial service was a culmination of that effort, a tangible symbol of justice and remembrance. James was invited to speak first. Standing before the gathered crowd, he felt a wave of emotion. The weight of the history he had uncovered, the voices he had amplified, and the spirits he had connected with all pressed upon him. "Thank you all for being here today," he began, his voice steady but filled with emotion. Whispering Woods was a place of tragedy, a forgotten battlefield where brave soldiers were betrayed and left to be forgotten. But today we honor their memory and ensure their sacrifices are remembered. This memorial stands as a testament to their courage and a reminder of the importance of uncovering the truth, no matter how long it takes. James recounted his journey, from discovering the spectral figures in his photographs to finding the tin box with the soldiers' final letters. He spoke of the haunting voices captured on his recorder, the anguish and hope of the spirits who had reached out to him. As he spoke, he could see the impact his words had on the audience: tears, solemn nods, and expressions of gratitude. "When I first came to Whispering Woods, I was driven by curiosity and a desire to capture history through my lens. What I found was a story that needed to be told, voices that demanded to be heard. I am honored to have played a part in bringing this story to light, and I am grateful to all of you for helping ensure these soldiers are remembered." As James concluded his speech, he stepped aside to allow others to share their thoughts. Historians spoke of the significance of the discovery. Archaeologists detailed the findings that corroborated the soldiers' accounts, and descendants expressed their gratitude for the closure and recognition of their ancestors' sacrifices. The ceremony reached its emotional peak as a local choir performed a rendition of Amazing Grace, the haunting melody filling the clearing and echoing through the trees. James felt a profound sense of connection to the spirits, imagining them standing among the crowd, finally at peace. After the formal speeches and performances, attendees were invited to lay flowers at the base of the memorial. James watched as people approached, some with tears in their eyes, others with expressions of reverence. He joined them, placing a single white rose on the monument, a symbol of purity and remembrance. As the crowd began to disperse, James remained in the clearing, reflecting on the journey that had brought him here. The forest, once oppressive and filled with the weight of unresolved history, now felt lighter, almost serene. The whispers of the leaves seemed softer, a gentle murmur of gratitude and peace. James took one final photograph of the memorial, the setting sun casting a warm glow over the scene. As he reviewed the image on his camera, he saw something that made his breath catch in his throat. The spectral figures of the soldiers appeared one last time, standing around the memorial with expressions of calm and gratitude. In the center, the figure of Thomas Everett stood, saluting James with a solemn, respectful gesture. A tear slid down James's cheek as he realized the significance of this final image. The spirits of Whispering Woods were finally at rest, their story told, their justice served. He felt a profound sense of closure, knowing that he had fulfilled his duty to these lost souls. Leaving Whispering Woods for the last time, James carried with him a deep respect for the power of stories and the importance of uncovering the truth, no matter how long it remained buried. He knew he would continue his work as a photographer with a renewed sense of purpose, always listening for the echoes of the past, ready to give voice to those who could no longer speak for themselves. As he drove away, the sun dipped below the horizon, casting the forest in twilight. The whispers of Whispering Woods faded into the distance, their story finally heard, their peace finally found. James felt a sense of calm wash over him, a quiet affirmation that he had done something meaningful, something that would resonate through history just as the echoes of war had resonated through his lens.